The reception hall glittered like a dream Evelyn Ward could no longer reach. Crystal chandeliers shimmered over silk-draped tables, laughter rang like wind chimes, and a soft waltz curled through the air like perfume. She sat near the edge of it all, her chair slightly off the circle of light, smiling when someone caught her eye, nodding when they offered the polite kind of smile people reserve for someone they're not sure how to include. Her cousin had married into old money, the wedding had been an event of the year. Everyone looked perfect. Sleek dresses, tailored suits, champagne glasses held at just the right angle. Evelyn, with her midnight blue gown and diamond pins in her hair, matched the picture well enough, but the wheelchair at her side was always the unspoken punctuation. The glittering people around her treated it like a wall they couldn't see over. She adjusted her shawl, pretending to check her phone, though the screen had been dark for an hour. She told herself she was content watching the others, the bride glowing with new promises, the groom's mother wiping her eyes, the band's singer smiling with her whole body. Evelyn had once loved weddings, their choreography, the joy, the chance to disappear into shared celebration. But since the accident, they had become small mirrors reflecting what she'd lost. Her assistant, kind but nervous, had disappeared after the first toast. "Enjoy yourself," Evelyn had said, and the woman had fled gratefully to the dance floor. Evelyn couldn't blame her. Who wanted to stand guard over a woman who didn't want company? A ripple of laughter burst from a nearby table. She turned her head and caught sight of a little girl crawling under the white tablecloth, chasing something shiny. The girl's curls bounced like springs, her tiny shoes flashing silver. A man, mid-30s, broad-shouldered, in rolled-up sleeves and a loosened tie, knelt beside the table, whispering something that made the girl giggle harder. He must have been one of the photographers. His camera hung from his shoulder, smudged with fingerprints and confetti dust. Evelyn smiled despite herself. The girl peeked out from beneath the tablecloth, spotted her, and froze. For a moment they just stared, Evelyn, the quiet woman in the corner, and the child with frosting on her chin. Then the little girl raised a hand and waved shyly. Evelyn raised hers back, slow and tentative, as if the movement might break the spell. The girl's grin widened before she ducked back under the table. The man looked up, noticed Evelyn watching, and gave an apologetic smile. "Sorry," he mouthed. She shrugged, mouthing, "It's fine." Something in his eyes softened before he turned back to his daughter. She watched them longer than she meant to. The man's movements were gentle but firm, his patience practiced. Every so often, the little girl, Mia, she heard someone call, would dart across the room to bring him a napkin, or a fallen flower, or simply a hug. He'd ruffle her hair, and Evelyn could almost hear the laughter even through the music. When the bride and groom took to the floor for their first dance, everyone crowded around to watch. The band's tempo slowed to a tender waltz. Evelyn's gaze drifted over the couple spinning like silk ribbons. She remembered how it had felt to be led through motion, to feel the beat in her chest instead of just her ears. Her fingers twitched against the armrest, reflex, muscle memory of a body that used to obey. A waiter stopped by, offering champagne. "No, thank you," she said softly. He hesitated, perhaps wanting to offer conversation, but she turned back toward the dance floor before he could. As the applause swelled and the music changed, she saw the man with the camera again. He'd set his equipment down and was scooping up Mia, who was tugging at his sleeve, pointing toward the dancers. Evelyn watched them spin in slow, playful circles near the edge of the crowd, not quite a part of it but happier for that. And then, unexpectedly, the girl looked over her father's shoulder, caught Evelyn watching again, and waved a second time, this time with both hands, laughing. Evelyn couldn't help it. She laughed too, a small, startled sound that felt like cracking ice. The man turned at the sound, and for a brief second, his gaze met hers. It wasn't pity or curiosity, just warmth. The kind that said, "I see you there." Evelyn looked away first, pretending to adjust her gown. But even as the next song began and the crowd shifted, the echo of that simple connection lingered, fragile, unfamiliar, and strangely hopeful. The music changed sometime after the cake had been cut. The string quartet had packed up, replaced by a DJ who played songs meant to make even the shyest guests dance. Couples spun, the floor a blur of color and laughter. Evelyn lingered at her corner table, half in shadow, tracing the rim of her empty glass with a fingertip. The sugar from her untouched dessert clung faintly to her lips, a ghost of sweetness she hadn't earned. She thought about leaving. Her driver was waiting outside, and no one would notice her absence. She could slip away as quietly as she'd arrived. But as she turned her chair slightly toward the exit, something flickered in her peripheral vision. Motion, light, and the small figure of the girl from earlier, Mia. The child was sitting cross-legged on the floor, fiddling with her tiny shoes, while her father crouched beside her, camera now resting on a nearby chair. Evelyn hesitated, then looked away, not wanting to intrude. But a minute later, she heard a soft, familiar voice. "Hi." She turned and found Mia standing right next to her, small hands clutching the edge of Evelyn's tablecloth. The girl's cheeks were pink from dancing. "Hello," Evelyn said, her voice a little uncertain. "You're the lady from before," Mia said with complete confidence. "The one who waved." Evelyn smiled. "Guilty." Mia looked at the wheelchair, her eyes curious but not judgmental. "Your chair is shiny," she said, peering at the polished frame. Evelyn blinked, surprised by the innocence of it. "It is, isn't it? I like shiny things too. Daddy says I like everything shiny," the girl said proudly. "He takes pictures of me when I find them." A voice cut gently through the air. "Mia, sweetheart, are you bothering this lady?" Evelyn looked up. The man from earlier stood there, slightly breathless, his tie loosened and his hair just messy enough to make him look real in this room of sculpted perfection. "Not at all," Evelyn said quickly. "She's delightful company." He smiled, that same unstudied warmth she'd noticed before. "She tends to be." He crouched beside his daughter. "Come on, Munchkin, let's give the nice lady some space." Mia frowned. "But I was talking." Evelyn laughed softly. "It's all right. She can stay for a minute, if you don't mind." He studied Evelyn's face, as though trying to read something there, then nodded. "If you're sure." He sat down in the empty chair beside her, turning it backward so he could face both Evelyn and Mia. "I'm Luke," he said, offering his hand. "Evelyn," she said, shaking it. His grip was firm but gentle, his palm slightly calloused, the kind of texture that came from real work, not gym equipment or golf clubs. They talked in the easy, tentative way of two people who hadn't planned to. Luke explained he was one of the photographers hired for the wedding, but tonight he'd let his assistant handle most of it so he could enjoy a few hours with Mia. Evelyn told him she was related to the bride, though she left out the part about the billionaire tech empire. She found it refreshing, how he didn't recognize her. The conversation drifted, light as the music, childhood memories, favorite foods, small stories about Mia's obsession with ladybugs. Evelyn felt herself relaxing, her laughter genuine, unforced. Then the DJ's voice came through the speakers. "All right, folks, let's slow it down." A hush rippled through the room as a new melody began, soft and tender. Couples returned to the floor, arms wrapping around each other as the lights dimmed to gold. Evelyn glanced instinctively away, her throat tightening. The dance floor always carried a quiet ache for her now, a place she'd once belonged. She turned her chair slightly toward the garden doors, pretending to admire the lights outside. But Luke was watching her. She could feel it. After a moment, he said quietly, "You look like you used to love dancing." Her hand stilled on the armrest. "I did," she admitted. "A long time ago." He hesitated, then stood. "Well," he said, holding out a hand, "maybe it's time to remember how it feels." She blinked up at him. "You're serious?" He nodded, smiling but not teasing. "Will you dance with me?" Her first instinct was to laugh, to deflect, to make it easier for both of them. "I don't exactly waltz anymore," she said softly. Luke crouched so they were eye level. The music swelled around them, a slow, steady heartbeat. "Then I'll follow your lead," he said. Evelyn's throat went dry. Around them, people were swaying, spinning. The lights shimmered like melted stars. For a heartbeat she saw the world as it might be, not what she'd lost, but what she could still choose. Finally, she placed her hand in his. "All right," she whispered. Luke smiled. "All right then." He moved with care, one hand guiding her chair gently as he stepped in rhythm, not leading her but matching her. And as the music carried them, Evelyn felt something unexpected stir inside her, something she thought she'd buried with the woman she used to be. Hope. The music swelled and softened like a heartbeat. Evelyn felt the tremor of it beneath her skin, the way she once had when her legs still carried her through the world. Luke's hand rested lightly on hers, not possessive, not guiding, just present. He moved around her wheelchair with surprising ease, adapting his steps to the rhythm without forcing her into it. It wasn't a waltz anyone had ever been taught, but somehow it worked. People had noticed. She could feel their eyes on them, the pause in conversation, the quiet gasp that spread like wind through tall grass. Evelyn braced for the familiar twinge of discomfort, that creeping awareness of pity. But when she glanced up, she saw something else entirely. The crowd wasn't looking at her like a woman trapped, they were watching as if witnessing something beautiful and unexpected. Luke smiled, just enough to reach his eyes. "See, you're doing great." She laughed softly. "You make it sound like a lesson. Everything worth remembering is," he said, his tone easy. "You lead, I follow. That's the deal." Her lips curved. "I don't remember agreeing to that." "You didn't have to." The song floated through the air, a slow blend of strings and piano. He stepped closer, and she found herself matching his rhythm, moving her chair slightly forward, then back, turning in small arcs. It was clumsy at first, then graceful in a way that belonged only to them. The motion loosened something in her chest, a knot she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. When the chorus hit, she tilted her head back and laughed, a full, unguarded sound that startled her. Luke chuckled too, low and warm, and for a moment, the rest of the room disappeared. Across the dance floor, little Mia was perched on a chair, clapping her hands. "Go, Daddy," she shouted, her voice ringing above the music. The guests laughed, breaking the tension that had hovered. Evelyn turned toward the sound, smiling so wide her cheeks ached. "She's your biggest fan," Evelyn said. "Mine and yours," Luke replied. "She told me you're her new friend." Evelyn's throat tightened. Friend. It had been a long time since anyone had called her that without wanting something in return. When the music faded, applause rippled through the hall. She blushed, mortified and exhilarated all at once. "They're clapping for the novelty," she murmured. Luke shook his head. "No, they're clapping because it was beautiful." The next song began, something upbeat, and other couples reclaimed the floor. Luke leaned close enough for her to catch the faint scent of cedar and clean soap. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me dance with you." She looked down, fingers tightening around the armrest. "You don't have to thank me." "Maybe not, but I will anyway." He held her gaze for a moment too long, and the air between them felt charged, and spoken things humming there, dangerous and tender. Evelyn turned away, her heart thrumming faster than the music. Later, when the night thinned and guests began to drift toward the exits, Luke found her again near the terrace doors. The sky outside was navy blue, strung with fairy lights. Mia was asleep on a bench nearby, her tiny head resting on a folded jacket. "You're not much of a party person, are you?" Luke asked gently. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Not lately." He leaned against the railing, hands in his pockets. "You know, you could have fooled me out there. You looked like you were having fun." "I was," she admitted, surprised at how true it felt. "But that's dangerous. Fun makes you want more." Luke studied her, the night wind brushing his hair. "What's wrong with wanting more?" She hesitated, searching for words. "Because people like me don't get to just want things. There's always a cost." He tilted his head. "You mean the chair?" Her eyes flicked to him, sharp. "I mean everything that comes with it." He was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I think you're wrong." She almost laughed, but the sound caught in her throat. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're brave enough to show up. And you're still here, after everything. That's not nothing." Something in his tone, steady, unembellished, made her chest ache. She wanted to believe him, but years of practiced detachment tugged her back. Luke straightened, glancing at Mia, then at Evelyn. "We should go. Early morning tomorrow." He hesitated before adding, "Can I see you again?" Evelyn froze. For a heartbeat, she wanted to say yes, to step into the small, quiet possibility between them. But the old fear returned, whispering that she would only be a complication, a story he didn't need. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said softly. He didn't argue. He just nodded, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "All right, but thank you for the dance." He turned, lifting Mia gently into his arms. Evelyn watched them go, the little girl's head resting on his shoulder. When the doors closed behind them, the room felt colder, emptier. She stayed by the terrace, the echo of the dance still pulsing faintly in her memory, the weight of his hand, the warmth of laughter, the strange, fragile feeling that maybe, for a few minutes, she hadn't been broken at all. The city skyline shimmered like a handful of diamonds scattered across black velvet. Evelyn watched it from her office window, the glass reflecting her pale face and tired eyes. Weeks had passed since the wedding, but the memory of that night lingered. With an almost physical ache, the music, the laughter, the feeling of movement, of being seen. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel Luke's hand in hers, the way he'd said, "You led, I follow." Since then, she'd buried herself in work. Her company's foundation had launched a new initiative, tech accessibility for children with disabilities, and she had thrown her entire being into it. Her board praised her drive, investors called her inspirational. But when the lights went out and the office emptied, she was just Evelyn again, alone with her thoughts, her wheelchair, and the echo of a dance that refused to fade. The charity gala tonight was her doing, a culmination of months of effort. The rooftop garden was transformed into an elegant oasis of soft lights and quiet jazz. Guests mingled with practiced ease, donors shaking hands, journalists snapping photos. Evelyn played her part flawlessly, smiling, nodding, giving the kind of speeches that made people cry and write checks. And yet, as the music drifted over the city, she felt the old ache return. The same song from the wedding began to play, its notes tender and familiar. She swallowed hard, gripping the armrest of her chair. It was coincidence, of course, but it hit like a whisper from fate. She turned toward the terrace edge to catch her breath, and froze. Luke was there, standing near the entrance, holding something small and blinking in his hand, a portable speaker. His suit was simple, his hair slightly windblown, and beside him stood little Mia, wearing a pink dress and a grin that could light up the skyline. Evelyn's heart stuttered. For a moment, she thought she might be imagining them, conjured by memory and wishful thinking. But then Mia spotted her and waved so hard her ponytail bounced. "Hi, Evelyn," the girl called, breaking the spell. Luke smiled, sheepish and steady all at once. "We were in the neighborhood," he said, approaching slowly. "Thought we'd crash a billionaire's party." Evelyn blinked, half laughing, half breathless. "I didn't think billionaires' parties were on your usual route." "They're not," he admitted, lifting the speaker. "But I owed someone a dance." Her breath caught. "You remembered. Hard to forget," he said softly. "Besides, Mia wouldn't let me." The little girl nodded solemnly. "Daddy said you're brave." "I wanted to see the brave lady again." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I think your daddy's the brave one." Luke placed the speaker on the ground. The same song, their song, began to play again, soft against the hum of the city. He extended his hand, just as he had that night. "Will you dance with me?" Around them, guests had turned to look. Evelyn could feel the attention gathering like heat against her skin. But this time, it didn't matter. She didn't feel small or different. She just felt seen. She placed her hand in his, her pulse quickening. "All right," she whispered. Luke smiled, moving in rhythm with her chair as the city lights blinked below. They danced the way they had before, imperfect, improvised, real. Mia twirled nearby, clapping her hands in time with the music. Laughter spilled from Evelyn's lips, light and unrestrained, blending with the melody. When the song ended, the applause that followed wasn't polite, it was joyful, alive. Luke leaned in, his voice low enough for her alone. "You led beautifully." Evelyn smiled through tears she didn't bother to hide. "I finally believe you," she said. The city stretched out beneath them, endless and shining. Luke's fingers brushed hers, and Mia's laughter echoed in the night. For the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel like a woman watching life from the sidelines. She was part of it again, moving in its rhythm, breathing its warmth. The music faded, but she stayed close, her heart still dancing long after the last note disappeared into the stars.